So good evening, everyone. I think I know many of you. I'm Patrick Mann. I'm the director of the School for Advanced Studies in the Arts and Humanities, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our fall orientation and program launch. I'm going to begin with the land acknowledgement. Western University is situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and the Attawandaron peoples who have long-standing relationships to the land and region of southwestern Ontario and the City of London. The local First Nation communities of this area include the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. In the region, there are 11 First Nations communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. Western values the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island. So I am going to stop there and introduce our wonderful Dean, Dr. Michael Milday, who is going to bring some words of welcome. And also we have such an honor to have our new president, Dr. Alan Shepard here, and Michael will introduce him.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to say a whole bunch of things, but not right now, because right now I'm going to turn the floor over to our brand new, very shiny president, who has heard so much about SASAH that he couldn't stay away, or something like that, or we invited him, one of those two. And so I'm just going to invite him to come and say a few words. He can't stay long, but here he comes.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Patrick. It's a great pleasure to be with you this evening. I also come from the arts and humanities discipline. I studied English as an undergraduate, and although my parents were very worried that I would be unemployed, I'm doing okay. Here I am. I'm working with you. I'm super thrilled to be joining Western. I'm coming. Hey, come on in. Welcome. You have to sit in the front row if you're late. That's all. But no, I'm teasing. That's the standard punishment. Thank you for coming. I'm arriving from Montreal. Anybody here from Montreal? Oui, bonsoir, bonsoir. I'm super thrilled to be with you here at Western, here in London. My family's here with me. I brought my grade 12 sons, and they're mostly forgiven me for moving them at the last year of high school, mostly. I wanted to say just a couple words about studying the arts and humanities in this era. We're really in a historical moment when a lot of the attention, a lot of the glory goes to the STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, math, and so forth. Back in Montreal, they were busy trying to abort the word STEM for STEAM, and they were sticking the word arts in there all the time, something you may have seen. I wouldn't say we necessarily need to do that. I would just say that in this historical moment, studying arts and humanities is as important now as it's ever been, and it's going to continue to be so important to us. And I'll give you a quick example. In my iPhone in my pocket, I have this app called Life 360. Is anybody using Life 360? I can't recommend it, and you shouldn't tell your parents about it, because what it does is it tracks absolutely everything you do. So I could open it right now, and I could tell you where my sons are. If they were driving in a car, I could tell you the speed at which they were driving, 68 kilometers. Like one of them came home from high school today and he was going 88 kilometers. I'm thinking to myself, I don't think there's any 80-kilometer zones between high school and home, right? And my point is really about how in this technology-rich era that we're living in a moment of historical revolution that we're not really able to fully comprehend and get outside of and see from a distance. We can look at the printing press and what happened then, we can look at the Industrial Revolution, but we are right in the middle of all this stuff. And it is profoundly shaping what it means to be human, actually. It's changing what it means to be alive. And I don't think you will be cyborgs, but your children may be, and your children's children. Like, where's it all going? And the disciplines that are really well suited to engage these fundamental questions that are so important to the future of human beings and all the other animals on Earth is the arts and humanities. So I would say you've made a good choice. I hear good things about SASAH. Is that how you say it, SASAH? I was at another event and I said I was going to SASAH and someone said, are you talking about your children? I said, no, they are SASI. I'm going to SASAH. to talk to new students. I'm super thrilled to be here. Western's a great place. You made a good choice. And I hope you have a wonderful first year. And I'll give you the same advice. Some of you were just coming for another event I was at. I gave advice to first-year students. I kept it very clean this time. I said, eat your vegetables, get enough sleep, and get some exercise, especially important for the egghead bookworm types like me. Get enough exercise. And what that allows you to do is actually take good care of your mental health, that you get enough sleep, you get a decent nutrition, and you get some exercise. I was always a couch potato type when I was young. So taking care of yourself and taking care of each other, that really matters on your big quest for this program. So thank you again. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope you have a wonderful and great year. And I'm actually off to a dinner now, so that's the nature of this job. Anyway, thanks a lot. Have a great year.
I really appreciate it. Thanks very much, Alan. One of the challenges of inviting the president to come and give a few words is that we didn't coordinate our talks, and so he stole all my good ideas, because that's exactly what I was going to talk about. But what I want to do, really up front, is to welcome you all. Some of you I recognize as first-year people, and many of you I recognize as no longer first-year people. You've progressed, and we all do. So I really just want to say welcome, and welcome to this fabulous educational enterprise that is SASAH. As the president said, and I'll just repeat a little bit, these are amazing times. We own important parts of these times. You do, right? You are here to study and to participate in an educational undertaking that really will help shape the future. We're all mesmerized by the technology, but all the technology is really dumb until somebody puts some heart and soul into it. And that's really what our program here and what the Faculty of Arts and Humanities is about. It's about thinking about who we are as people, what's really important, what's beautiful, what's worth doing, and that's what Patrick is going to lead you through. No pressure, Patrick, as you go through the various stages of the SASAH program. So we're all, in our faculty, pulling for you. You are champions for what really matters, and I look forward to seeing you throughout the year and following your progress through all the fabulous projects that you're going to take. So bon courage, as they say back in Montreal, where apparently I'm from, and have a fabulous year. Thank you so much.
I can. Okay. So thank you, Michael. We have a fairly busy program, but I think it'll be an exciting one, and it's one where we're really showcasing you, our students, and you, our SASAH community. And one of the groups that you probably don't know that much about is a group called our Advisory Council. And our Advisory Council help us in many, many ways. They are all Western grads or Western faculty, former faculty. And they help us connect with the world of work. They take a tremendous interest in the various things that we do that make this program vital. And they really believe in us. And so one of our great benefits is having our Advisory Council means we have champions out in the world. And so that has been a tremendous asset to us. So one of the things we have for you is a few minutes of film by a former Arts and Humanities student, Mark Drew, where you'll meet some of our SASAH Advisory Council, and you'll find out more about why they're so valuable to us. Now, you're not going to hear from me too much this evening because you're going to be hearing from a couple of faculty members and also some of our students. But I do want to recognize that SASAH is certainly made up of a huge community, and you are part of it. And firstly, in regard to that, I want to pay special attention to our invited faculty member, Jamili Hassan, who is teaching our fourth-year capstone course. So if you just want to stand up for a second, Jamili. Thank you. Jamelia is an award-winning visual artist based here in London, Ontario. She's coordinated numerous cultural programs, including Orientalism and Ephemera, and her mixed media installations have been shown in Canada and internationally and collected by the National Gallery of Canada. In 2018, she was awarded an honorary Doctor of Fine Arts at OCAD University, and her course this year is going to connect the local and the global and will bring to Western a host of important and timely guests. And of course, you see a whole list of who is SASAH. The other two people I would pick out very quickly are the two people who are teaching our curriculum project courses in the second year this year. And so first of all, Dr. Constanza Barakua is teaching a course on film festivals around the world and at TIFF. And you saw Cameron Bailey up there. It's a second-year course called Beyond the Red Carpet. And Professor Ara Suksi is focusing in the second term with second years on classical Greek tragedy and themes of trauma and anger. And her course is entitled Performing Homer's Iliad. So we're really fortunate to have a very exciting year ahead of us. And I do note all of our student organizations, and there are even more things going on behind the scenes. Now, I just want to say a couple of things about our upcoming programs, and I am going to keep this really brief. Hopefully you're aware of our many talks and events. For those of you who were fortunate enough to get a ticket for the Kent Monkman talk, next Thursday at 7 p.m. at the Downtown Library, we will see you there, but please show up early, get there by 6:30. And also please join us on November 14th. That is our annual Robert and Patricia Duncanson lecture. And this year we have the astounding Naomi Oreskes from Harvard University. I think that'll be a really exciting talk. And in addition, among our many events, several of the guests that Jamelia is bringing in for her course, including Jim Drobnik and Jennifer Fisher, as well as John Grayson and Tara Klubani, will be speaking in this room on a couple of Thursday evenings, so please have a look at the details of that. Now I want to just give one little plug. This is a bit of the student orientation part. One little plug for our outreach activities. Dr. Michelle Sugar, who helped us last year in the role of outreach coordinator, is back in a liaison role again. And this semester, she'll be working primarily on our Western Performs program, in which we work with the Faculty of Music, and we invite some of our students to introduce the musical presentations by giving talks about the period from which the music is drawn and other detail that they often actually glean from talking to the musicians themselves in advance of the concerts. So Michelle will be organizing that. She will also be helping us involve our students in the speaker series and in the process of asking questions of our speakers. And then as well, we're really happy that Michelle is going to help us continue to develop our mentorship program, in which she'll be pairing first-year students with fourth-year students to help the incoming students acclimatize to the university and have a mentor in our wider program. Michelle will be around at the end of our presentation, and so please introduce yourself to her, and she'll have lots of information for you around volunteering in many of these roles. Okay, so that's my commercial break. I'm now going to take the opportunity and the pleasure of introducing Dr. Barbara Bruce. Our life at SASAH has increased tremendously well, or been improved tremendously since Barbara Bruce came into the role of Experiential Learning Coordinator. And I'm going to invite her to talk to you a little bit about her role and about that program. And then we have three of our students whose names are listed there who are going to be giving us brief talks about their projects. Barb?
There we go. Thank you, Patrick. And I feel like I should be bursting in a song with this thing in my hand, but I will spare you that agony. So, as SASAH's Experiential Learning Coordinator, I oversee and in some cases help students to find community-engaged learning opportunities, paid and unpaid internships, or independent projects with a community-engaged or career-related component. EL, experiential learning, activities are designed, among other things, to give students, to give you, real-world experience, to allow students to realize the soft skills that they're developing in the arts and humanities are valued outside the academy, to develop your skills further, and to apply theoretical knowledge in real-world settings. SASAH's experiential learning program is a great success, and that is not me tooting my own horn. Not at all. It's a success because the students have made it a success. Our students are doing great things with their EL opportunities. We have students excelling in internship and community-engaged learning opportunities and developing unique and compelling projects. Since I've started, and this is not empty rhetoric, since I've started, I have had nothing but glowing reports about SASAH students from their on-site supervisors. And the students are gaining great experience. They're professionalizing, exploring career options, or pursuing their passion projects. They're bursting out of the Western bubble to engage with the communities beyond our gates. Some have had career and life-altering experiences, and that's not an exaggeration, and all have had experiences that help them to feel better prepared for the world that awaits them after graduation. To give you a sense of how varied and exciting SASAH experiential learning can be, we've asked 3 fourth-year students to talk briefly about their very successful EL experiences. So first, I will ask Victoria Burnett to come up. She completed a CEL here in London and then went far afield for her second experience.
Hello. So as Barbara said, my name is Victoria, fourth-year SASAH student. My other major is in classical studies. And with SASAH, I've been fortunate enough to complete both of my internships already. As Barbara said, I did it at the Museum of Archaeology here in London, and the far afield one that I did was the Vindolanda Archaeological Field School through the Classical Studies Department. And in both of my internships, I have so many things that I could say about them, but the biggest thing is that both of them have given me the opportunity to learn how to take heritage and history and look at them in different ways and find different ways to engage with the public about it. So specifically, with the Museum of Archaeology, I kind of did a lot of things. I was just kind of that catch-all person. But one of the main things that I did was research. And there were 2 main research projects that I was helping with. One was the history of maple sugar, which is the blog post up there. And the other one was getting things ready to launch a Google Institute project for the museum. So Google Institute is really hard to explain. But essentially what it is that museums from all across the world can have their own exhibitions and honestly even virtual tours on Google so that people who, for instance, can't get to Edinburgh can do a virtual tour of the National Museum of Edinburgh or see, well, they're call them stories, but they're exhibitions, and learn more without ever leaving their home, although I do suggest leaving your home. It's kind of beautiful. So what I was doing there was, again, getting research together and figuring out what kind of story we wanted to tell about London. So the story that I decided I wanted to tell, specifically about the Museum of Archaeology, was focusing on children and families, especially women. Because, as I discovered, it is very hard to find research about that, and so that's why I thought it was really important. And also, everyone kind of thinks the Museum of Archaeology, especially the one here in London, has to be very kid-based, so I wanted to lean into that. So as I said, my second internship was at the Vindolanda Archaeological Field School. It's along Hadrian's Wall, and it was a Roman military fort. I've worked in archaeology before, working at 1812 site here in Ontario. And again, I got to learn the different ways heritage is taken care of, both digging in the trenches and also just how the artifacts are processed and shown later in museums, because Wow, we visited a lot of museums in the first week. I can't even remember them all. So some of the photos up here are actually from when I worked at the 1812 site, just so I could show a little bit of difference. The one in the bottom right corner here with the orange shirt gal, that's actually how we processed our artifacts. We would essentially take a cat litter box of dirt out of our unit and dump it over a metal screen, which you can see in the top middle photo, and shake it. Artifacts stayed on top, or anything too big to fall through the holes, dirt fell down. So I went to Vinalanda and I was like, yep, I know exactly what I'm doing. No. Picture of me in the bottom left corner, that's how we processed our dirt. We sat and we went through wheelbarrows of dirt. Some of it was very ancient manure, and man, did it stink. I'm not kidding, oh my God. So in both cases, there was a problem of preservation that we had to deal with, both on-site and off. What was left behind didn't always tell the whole story. So we didn't want to extrapolate too much, but we also didn't want to extrapolate not enough. And one thing that, again, was present both in the Museum of Archaeology and at Vinalanda is that there are problems inherent in every museum collection, so we had to get around that somehow. There were cases where I say we, I wasn't part of it. There were cases where museums had historical collections where things were taken care of in ways that didn't fit with our current values and our current practices. So museums constantly have to make decisions about that, how they're going to show things to the public, how are they going to be open and honest about what their collections are, the story that they're telling, and also how are they going to continue to conserve something. So it was a lot of learning different ways of doing things. So this is from the Corbridge Museum. It's down the road from Vinalanda. It's another Roman site. But this window display, I think, actually kind of sums up everything that I really learned in both cases. So what this is it's different pieces of stonework that were found on that site, and they've put them in front of a window. The background is actually the archaeological site itself. It's no longer an active excavation, but what it's supposed to be doing is that it's supposed to be forcing the perspective of the visitors. And that's what really got my attention. Because the museum curator there was trying to say, look, here are the things, but if you just see them standing on a wall or in a museum that doesn't have windows, I've worked in those, they're kind of creepy, you don't really make the full connection with what you're looking at. And that's something that I'm very interested in, is how can we get people to understand what they're looking at and make those connections. So you get to see perspective of height, you get to connect those things back with where they came from. So, yeah, I don't know how I was going to end that.
Thank you, Victoria. Next, I'm going to ask Alex Bush to come up. Alex completed 2 very different EL projects, both of her own design.
So I'm Alex. I'm in my 4th year of SASAH. I'm also doing a major in math and a minor in English. I'm only going to talk to you about one of my experiential learning projects tonight, and that was with an organization called ANOVA. If you haven't heard of ANOVA before, I was in the same boat about 1.5 years ago until one of their public ed people came in to talk to my 2nd year SASAH class, actually, and I followed up on that, and my project was born. So, ANOVA is the merger and rebranding of what used to be Sexual Assault Centre London and Women's Community House. We have 4 main pillars of service. So shelter, we have 2 locations with 67 shelter beds. We also have halfway housing for women and their families who are transitioning out of shelter. We have support, that's the 2nd main one, they go in different order, but we do a lot of free counseling, we do support groups, and we run the 24-hour crisis and support line for the London area, so any kind of question that you might have, any time of day about sex, about relationships, about violence, discrimination, call them, they will have your answer. I'm going to put the number up at the end. We also work on advocacy and education. So I did a lot of work in a lot of different parts of the shelter over my year there. However, my most exciting part for me that I'm going to focus on was with the public ed team. So I got this awesome mentor. Her name was Annalise Trudell, and she is probably one of the most intelligent and well-spoken people I could have ever met and been matched up with. And I got to follow her to all of her meetings and her presentations, learn about her job, learn about how she approaches these difficult topics and engages with her audiences. I got to co-facilitate with her for a few presentations, and then we'd talk afterwards, what went well, what didn't go well, what do I need to change for next time? And then after that, I was kind of on my own because she went off on mat leave. So I had a lot of presentations on a lot of different topics, and it was really, really interesting. So I got to talk about things like consent and sexual violence and rape culture in the media to audiences like Huron students or Western frats or adults with disabilities at Hutton House, as well as youth groups. So a lot of different types of audiences in there. Some presentations on like healthy masculinity to the London Knights. Worked with some disability service worker groups at Fanshawe to talk about how their clients might be facing some different problems when it comes to sex and relationships than they would be facing themselves, as well as talking about how to make inclusive workplace practices at Goodwill. So those were a couple just different types of topics, and for me they were really interesting and really relevant. So the best part of my project was the fact that I got to discover a topic I didn't know I was passionate about before, and then I didn't just get to study it at school, but I got to actually go out into my community and make a difference. And for me, that was really rewarding and really interesting as opposed to just writing an essay. I was like, no, I'm actually in my community and making some small changes in my small corner of the world, which was really cool. I also got to work on developing professional skills. So actually in a workplace, how do my writing skills make a difference? How does my communication skills actually come into play? How does teamwork actually play out in a job, and working on leadership styles? And if I was running this meeting, what would I be doing differently versus what's going really well for this team right now? And I found that really, really useful just for trying to market myself for future jobs and thinking about grad school and being like, why do my skills matter, and how are they actually going to be useful in the future, and what is my education right now actually teaching me for the real world? So for me, it was really cool to actually see that in play. But I think the biggest takeaway is my confidence went up a lot from this internship. It kind of had to, walking into a room, sometimes a couple hundred people that I didn't know, talking to them about sex, talking to them about uncomfortable topics, and then trying to handle all the weird questions they threw at me with like a little bit of grace, which didn't always happen, but maybe sometimes. And I also got to, value my work and my time a little bit more, because I'm really good at admitting when I don't know something. I'm great at owning that, and I'm great at being the dumbest person in the room, because I think you learn the most when you're in that situation, and I love that. But I think after this, I'm a little bit better at owning when I do know things and how my skills are actually valuable and how my education is actually going to move places and take me somewhere in the future. So for me, that was probably the most rewarding part of this experience that I wouldn't have had just at school. So I'm going to leave you with our helpline number. And if you have any questions later about like my project or volunteering with Innova, because they are awesome, so I will always put in a plug for them, come on up and talk to me afterwards.
Thank you, Alex. So the last student I'm going to have talk today is Amelia Ekbal, who also traveled, albeit a bit closer to home, for her first experience and was chosen out of a highly competitive field of applicants for her second experience.
Oh, is there a clicker? Is it up on? Ha, okay. Hi, everyone. So like Barb mentioned, my name is Amelia. I am a fourth-year SASAH student, also in English Language and Literature and Scholars Electives. But today I'm going to be talking about this neat little thing I did called the North Meets South Exchange. The basics of what that is that it was a partnership between the Junior Economic Club of Canada and the Canadian Roots Exchange. So they're two different organizations. The Junior Economic Club of Canada is an offshoot of the Economic Club of Canada. The Economic Club of Canada mainly runs events where they host, they're called the National Podium of Record for Canada, because they host people like Michelle Obama, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau, all those kinds of people. The Junior Economic Club of Canada is a little bit more earthy in that they really run a lot of workshops to get youth interested in financial literacy, as well as entrepreneurship, advocacy, civic engagement, things like that. Canadian Roots Exchange is a bit more Indigenous focused. So they're really focused on connecting youth and bringing them into the cause of truth and reconciliation. So they do that through a variety of means. One is this exchange. They also do conferences, things like that, workshops as well. So this was a partnership between the two of them. It brought together 10 Indigenous youth, mainly from Thunder Bay area, though a couple were from the London area, which is really neat for me, and 10 non-Indigenous youth, mostly from Southern Ontario. So there were a few from Ottawa, and then there were a few from the GTA, like myself. And we were supposed to work together on creating a public policy framework. I've never taken a political science course. I did not know what a public policy framework looked like or what it was supposed to include. But I think one thing I've gained from SASAH, and I'm sure a lot of the up-ears can attest to this, is that it makes you do a lot of things you might not necessarily know anything about when you start. And then you jump right in. So that was kind of one skill from SASAH that really helped me with this, and that I wasn't afraid to tackle that project so much. The one interesting thing I'll note is that it was a very diverse age group. So it was 14-year-olds to 24-year-olds, and we did have pretty much that whole range. So we had people just starting high school, and we had people in university like myself, and people that had graduated. So it was a really, really interesting, diverse group in terms of age, backgrounds, as well as kind of life experiences. I want to show the itinerary of what we did because it's vastly different. I could say that the 2 weeks went by in a flash, but that's not entirely true. The first week went by very slowly because we spent it on Manitoulin Island, and that is a beautiful, beautiful place to be. If you've never been, I highly recommend it. I'll show pictures later. But our itinerary for that, we met with a bunch of elders and talked about vicarious trauma as well as the legacy of residential schools. And we also talked about just Anishinaabe teaching, so the medicine wheel and those kinds of oral storytelling traditions. And then we also met with a medicine woman and went on a medicine hike to see how kind of that practice works. And we did workshops on colonialism, went to an alpaca farm to see how Indigenous people today kind of make their living while still engaging with their practices. Visited historical sites, one of them being the Ojibwe Cultural Center, which I'll show a picture of later. And then we also did beading exercise and a sunrise ceremony. So we were up at 3 a.m. and on a reserve and kind of taking in this ceremony, which was really, really very grateful experience that I had. I was very grateful for that experience. Conversely, in Toronto, we were back to kind of the uptake of the very fast-paced city life. So we had a public policy panel. We were based on Bay Street. So all these different powerhouse offices. So we were in PwC, we were in the Bank of Canada building. And coming from all these hikes and kind of nature walks we were doing was pretty jarring, even for me who's been to Toronto all my life. We also did a networking presentation, went to a Blue Jays game, went to Toronto Island, did a life coach workshop and talked about mindfulness. And then we also finally concluded with Pitch Day, which is where we pitched our public policy frameworks to various change makers that we'd met along the way and also to some government officials. So now it's picture time. So just to show you kind of the difference between the 2 weeks. So this is a nature hike we did. This is a lookout point we went to. This is kind of my view every day. We were right by the lake. This was the Ojibwe Cultural Center, which had a bit of a residential school museum, as well as the beading workshop. This was the remnants of an Indian day school, which is where students would go when they weren't enrolled in residential school, so they voluntarily went there. So the good kids is how our guide Sunset kind of explained it to us. So that was a very kind of haunting exhibit to see, but it was also important to see that right where we were learning about all these places is where it happened. And then we also had the alpaca farm. There's the alpaca. There were many of them, it wasn't just that one. And then there was also, we really got immersed in life on a reserve in that there were res dogs or reserve dogs. So this is Smokey. He would come into the cultural center we worked in every day and literally just come in with a ball and just sit with us. I called him our unofficial therapy dog because sometimes we had really heavy moments and he'd always happen to run in at those times. So he was really great to have around. Conversely, this is one last photo of me and my friend Jonathan. We were practicing a song that we just learned in a language we just learned on an instrument we just learned. So it went about as well as you can imagine. But it was a really great experience to kind of experience the culture and kind of work that practice of sharing and education. Conversely, in Toronto, we went to a Blue Jays game, got myself a foot long. We also went to Toronto Island, and this is kind of one of the offices we were in at PwC. So this was our networking and kind of job readiness workshop. I think I answered a question, so that's why I'm in that picture. So they were really trying to not only teach us about Anishinaabe culture, but also prepare us for the workforce and prepare us for this pitch day. So it was a very kind of two-pronged approach. This is pitch day, so this is me and my group mates. Originally, all 20 of us were supposed to work on a public policy framework, and that dissolved as quickly as you can imagine. So then we started into smaller groups. My group's focus was on preventing or developing strategies to help prevent Indigenous youth suicide rates from going up in rural areas. So that's us presenting on the stage. And those are some of our judges. So the person on the left is a organization leader. The person in the middle is from PwC. And the person on the right is a policymaker. And then that's us singing a song. Me on the right and Rachel in the middle are not Indigenous, and then Anella and Davy, who are the other two girls in floral dresses, are actually from London area, and they are Indigenous, so that was a really cool experience for us to kind of all share together. And that was our counselor, Lisa, on the left. They did have counselors with us because we were talking about very heavy topics, and it can really impact you, so they had to make sure we had counselors there to kind of make sure that we were okay throughout the experience, which was great planning. And then this is all of us all together, so all of the people that worked with us as well as the entire group. And if I can just conclude on kind of what the experience means to me, it was truly life-changing, and I don't think you ever think you're gonna have those moments, or at least know you're having them when you're in them. But I knew this project was gonna be pretty special from the application itself, because I could tell it really wanted to get to know me instead of hear me tell them what I thought they wanted them to hear. So they asked me about who would I want to meet. That was a public figure and why, and I got to talk about Lin-Manuel Miranda. And they asked me about a moment I thought was life-changing, and I talked about when I saw Dear Evan Hansen, and they liked it, and they took me. So that was really interesting for me. And also to see an all-female leadership team. So all these women just on the right here, just huge role models for me now, because they're on Bay Street along with the rest of them, running the show, running Canada's national podium of record. So kind of having that mentorship opportunity as well was super important to me. And now I feel I also got a crash course in allyship in a lot of ways. It taught me really to sit back and listen when it's time to speak up and when it's time to empower others to kind of take their place and speak up. So that was a bit about my experience, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. We are on the home stretch to our last presentation, which is our student film from last year. But prior to that, I just wanted to make an announcement that we have a couple of awards that we're establishing this year. The first is for our third-year students who are, among various things that they're doing as part of their experiential learning online course, they're going to be writing proposals, plans, for publishing one of their research projects in their fourth year. And so after each of them does that, we will have a competition, and we'll be awarding two prizes of $750 for a couple of those proposals. And in addition to that, we are establishing a couple of fourth-year awards related to experiential learning, and I just have to say, stay tuned for details on that, third and fourth-year students. Now, last year our capstone course was taught by Governor General's award-winning Indigenous artist Shelley Nero, and the students, I think, did have a life-changing experience learning about Indigenous culture from many, many vantage points. It was an amazing course. And following on that, Professor Lawrence Deleuze took over the role of instructor in January 2019. And he did so with great enthusiasm and vision, and I would say a level of trust. So I thank Lawrence and congratulate him, and in particular I congratulate the remarkable students who worked on the film for Home and Native Land that we'll be seeing this evening. So I'll invite Lawrence and Jill O'Craven up, and you'll hear from Cassandra a little later.
I don't have much to say. The main thing I want to say is that I didn't make this film. The students made this film. Patrick came to me with a terrifying proposition, which was, would I do something with the second term, fourth year students that went back to Indigenous matters because they worked with Shelley Nero, and to something in the past. And with me in first year, we had done projects on World War I soldiers. And I've always been fascinated by the plaque in the main entrance to University College, where all the World War I soldiers who died from these areas around here are listed. And there's 11 names of Indigenous soldiers. So I looked for a way to put this together, and I pushed, pulled, dragged the fourth year students into doing a documentary film, research on these soldiers, and then doing a film on it. I was a facilitator. That is to say, I would go check out cameras, I would set up places to do interviews, I would contact people to be interviewed. But the students did everything. They wrote the interview questions, they conducted the interviews, they ran the cameras, they set up the lighting, they edited the film, they composed the music for it, they set up the story, the storyboard, and the storyline. The only thing I said was, we start with the plaque, and I kind of insisted that we end with the custodian, Barney. Other than that, the students made this whole film, and I was just in the background. I often didn't even know what they were doing.
Yeah, as Lawrence said, when he came to us with this idea, it was very open-ended. One of the amazing things about SASAH, I think, is that it always encourages that exploration and that open-endedness and that creativity. Sometimes there will be a little more direction, but often projects are very much open to interpretation. And so it was very much open to us to take it in whatever direction we felt it deserved to go in. And we knew that Lawrence was there to support us and to encourage us and to guide us, but it wasn't so much a professorial student relationship as you might see in a lot of courses where he's telling us what to do. It was very much he's supporting us and encouraging us and providing us the resources and the support that we need, but we were very much in charge. We had our directors, we had our student producers, we had, as he said, the editors, the camera workers, the audio, everything was very much student run. We also had students who were focusing on the storyboard and the research and looking at how we wanted to tell the story. One thing that we thought was very important was that we are, for the most part, non-Indigenous students. I'm not sure if there was one or two Indigenous students, but for the most part, this wasn't necessarily our story to tell, and we thought it was an important story to tell, but we thought it was important to keep the focus on the Indigenous people, the Indigenous soldiers, and the Indigenous people who we were interviewing, and we wanted to make sure that we were respecting their experience and putting their experience front and center. And we recognized as well that it's almost impossible to tell a story without filtering it. So we tried to reflect it back to the people we were interviewing and make sure that we were telling the story that they wanted to tell, not just the story that we thought would come across well. So hopefully we did a good job. I think we're showing a little bit of it.
Thank you, Jill.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cassandra Haley, and I was one of the students lucky enough to work on this project last year. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to, again, express on behalf of myself and my classmates our gratefulness to the interviewees in this project. We had Evan Habkirk, who's a lecturer at Indigenous Studies at Western, Summer Brizette from Museum London, who is a member of the Anishinaabe Nation, Ian McCallum, who is the great-nephew of Arnold Logan, who is featured in this presentation, who is a Munsee language teacher and is from the Munsee Delaware Nation. I'd also like to thank Norma Logan Richer, who was Arnold Logan's niece, who was also a former resident of Mount Elgin Industrial School and is from the Munsee Delaware Nation. Also Jessica Hill, who was a history teacher at Beale Secondary School here in London, and is a member of the Oneida Nation of the Thames, as well as Barney Hughes, who was interviewed at the end as the caretaker at Western. I'd also like to extend our special thank you towards Ira Timothy from the Delaware Nation of the Thames, Tegan Moore, and as well to the SASAH Profs and administration, as well as Indigenous Service, the Dean's Office here in Arts and Humanities, the Longwood Conservation Area and Museum London, for giving us the opportunity to make this film. One of the things that we wanted to stress with this film going forward is that you'll have noticed is housed on YouTube, because we do believe in open access to this history and this knowledge that we ourselves did not have the privilege of learning in high school. We do believe that this is knowledge of Canadian history that's worth knowing, and we wanted to make it as accessible as possible. Going forward, the film is going to be featured with the Arts and Humanities alumni at Homecoming. We're also in communications with the Oneida and Munsee Reserves to screen potentially on Remembrance Day, as well as perhaps having a showing at Kiwanis in London, and being shown at various universities and high schools around Canada. To conclude, I would just like to take a few minutes to say thank you to everyone. I think I speak for everyone in my class when I say that this was quite a humbling film to make. We were very lucky to have the opportunity to work with direct descendants of these Indigenous people who fought for our country, and I just was very grateful to have this opportunity. Thank you very much.
So ends our program, and I thank you all for your attention, for your participation in SASAH, and for being part of our extended community and part of what I think is a pretty important project. So there is food and some stuff to drink and all kinds of things in the rooms next door. Please join us and eat all the food up. Thank you so much.